There is a financial choice that most people make with complete confidence. No one warns them, no one pushes back. On the contrary, that choice is often met with praise and approval. But if you follow its impact long enough, you will realize it is one of the most common reasons why so many people work hard for years and still fail to move forward. The problem is not reckless spending. It is not a lack of discipline, and it is not earning too little. The problem lies in decisions that feel familiar, reasonable, and socially accepted, yet quietly shape the entire trajectory of a person's financial life. If you have ever felt like you are doing everything right, but the results barely change over time, this is not a coincidence. It is a signal, a quiet signal that very few people learn how to recognize. I'm Dolan, and this is Money Signals, what you will see clearly by the end. In this video, I am not trying to convince you that you are doing something wrong. I am not here to offer extreme advice or rigid rules. What I want is to help you see the financial signals your life is already sending, even when everything looks fine on the surface. We will not start with numbers or charts. We will start with how a very common decision is formed, why society considers it reasonable, and why that very reasonableness is what makes it dangerous. You will see how a familiar expense can quietly shift from a helpful tool into a long-term drag without triggering any sense of alarm. I will guide you through 3 layers of awareness. The surface layer, where people believe higher income automatically leads to progress. The behavioral layer, where repeated decisions begin shaping cash flow in ways that are hard to notice. And finally, the system layer, where you can clearly see why 2 people with similar incomes end up in very different financial positions years later. You will not only understand what is happening, but why it happens to so many intelligent, responsible, and well-intentioned people. More importantly, you will gain a framework to evaluate your own decisions instead of comparing yourself to others or chasing appearances. By the end, the goal is not for you to remember specific numbers or examples. The goal is that when you look back at familiar financial decisions in your own life, you begin to read signals you previously overlooked. And once you can read the signal, you stop making decisions on autopilot. The context most people live inside. Look at how someone with a solid middle income manages money in everyday life. Most income is allocated very quickly. Housing takes the largest share. Taxes are deducted before money ever reaches the account. Fixed bills arrive on a predictable schedule. On the surface, everything appears controlled. Within this context, one trend has steadily grown for more than a decade. Total auto loan debt in the United States has surpassed $1 trillion and continues to reach new highs. What matters is not the absolute number, but how it grew. Not through luxury cars or extravagant consumption, but through vehicles considered practical and reasonable for daily life. Loan terms have grown longer. Monthly payments are structured to look manageable relative to current income. Purchase decisions are made based on monthly affordability, not total cost. And because there is no clear moment of pain, very few people step back to see the full picture. You see this everywhere. Someone gets a raise. A new job feels more stable. A life stage where society expects an upgrade. The car becomes the natural next step. No one calls it risky. No one treats it as a warning sign. The issue is not any specific vehicle. The issue is repetition at scale in an environment where living costs are already high and financial margin is thin. When a significant portion of income is locked into long-term commitments, the ability to respond to change declines. This is the context many people live inside. Not poor, not in crisis, but not truly moving forward either. And it is precisely in this state that the most important signals are often missed. In the next section, I will begin breaking down the forces inside this decision. Not through general commentary, but through 6 clear signals, each showing how a familiar choice can quietly slow your financial trajectory. 6 signals hiding inside a normal decision. Signal 1, monthly affordability hides the real cost. If a financial decision can be justified by answering the question, how much per month, you are almost certainly not seeing its full cost. This is how most large financial commitments are formed, not by total dollars, but by the feeling of manageability in the present. A few $100s per month feels familiar, safe, and acceptable. It does not trigger any warning response. Meanwhile, tens of thousands spread over many years never appear in full at the same time. At the moment of decision, everything feels smooth. Income covers the payment, other bills remain under control. Life is not disrupted. There is no immediate stress in the bank account. And because there is no immediate pain, the decision quickly gets labeled as reasonable. The issue is not whether the decision seems reasonable. The issue is how it is framed. When you evaluate a financial commitment primarily through monthly affordability, You remove the most important element from view: time. Time is where interest accumulates, where insurance renews annually, where maintenance and repairs arrive without warning, where asset value steadily declines. None of these arrive together, so the sense of trade-off never fully forms. The decision takes minutes, the consequences last years. This is not a failure of discipline. It is how financial choices are designed to feel acceptable today by pushing weight into the future. Over time, your financial system shifts quietly. You do not feel poorer, you feel less flexible. A portion of your income becomes locked into fixed commitments, making other choices harder. Not because you lack intent, but because cash flow has already been assigned. This is how many people remain financially stagnant without realizing it. Income may rise, but accumulation does not. Each increase gets absorbed by existing commitments. There is no collapse, just slow progress, or none at all. Breaking the signal requires forcing every major decision through the lens of time. Not asking how much per month, but how much in total. Asking what that money could have done if it were not locked away. When you shift from monthly framing to life cycle framing, many reasonable decisions change shape. And in that moment, you begin to see the signal you previously missed. Signal 2. Depreciation happens even when you do everything right. Even when you make a reasonable choice, select the right model, maintain it carefully, and use it responsibly, the vehicle begins taking money from you the moment you start using it. This is the hardest part for many people to accept. They believe that doing everything right should preserve value. But depreciation is not a penalty for misuse. It is the default mechanism of the asset. Time, not behavior, determines the outcome. The moment the car leaves the point of purchase, the market values it less. Nothing goes wrong, no mistake is made, time simply starts charging its fee. Each year, value declines regardless of how well you care for it. The danger is that depreciation never shows up as a bill. You do not receive monthly alerts telling you your asset just lost value. There is no sharp moment of pain. The loss happens quietly behind the fact that the vehicle still functions normally. At the same time, the cash outflow remains very visible, payments continue, insurance renews, maintenance is required. This creates a financial paradox few people confront. You are paying steadily to hold an asset that is steadily declining. Because these flows are not placed side by side, they rarely trigger concern. Over time, the gap between what you paid and what remains grows large. But because the process is gradual, it rarely feels dangerous. The loss only becomes clear in hindsight. Depreciation directly impacts long-term accumulation. When a declining asset consumes a large share of your cash flow, it slows the entire system. Not because you earn too little, but because effort is spent sustaining shrinking value. The solution is not fighting depreciation, but minimizing its impact, avoiding the steepest decline periods, extending usage, viewing the purchase across its entire financial life cycle rather than the moment of acquisition. Once you accept depreciation as unavoidable, your decisions change, not toward perfection, but toward limiting how much time is allowed to take from you. Signal 2. Depreciation happens even when you do everything right. Even when you make a reasonable choice, select the right model, maintain it carefully, and use it responsibly, the vehicle begins taking money from you the moment you start using it. This is the hardest part for many people to accept. They believe that doing everything right should preserve value, but depreciation is not a penalty for misuse. It is the default mechanism of the asset. Time, not behavior, determines the outcome. The moment the car leaves the point of purchase, the market values it less. Nothing goes wrong. No mistake is made. Time simply starts charging its fee. Each year, value declines regardless of how well you care for it. The danger is that depreciation never shows up as a bill. You do not receive monthly alerts telling you your asset just lost value. There is no sharp moment of pain. The loss happens quietly behind the fact that the vehicle still functions normally. At the same time, the cash outflow remains very visible. Payments continue, insurance renews, maintenance is required. This creates a financial paradox few people confront. You are paying steadily to hold an asset that is steadily declining. Because these flows are not placed side by side, they rarely trigger concern. Over time, the gap between what you paid and what remains grows large. But because the process is gradual, it rarely feels dangerous. The loss only becomes clear in hindsight. Depreciation directly impacts long-term accumulation. When a declining asset consumes a large share of your cash flow, it slows the entire system. Not because you earn too little, but because effort is spent sustaining shrinking value. The solution is not fighting depreciation, but minimizing its impact, avoiding the steepest decline periods, extending usage, viewing the purchase across its entire financial life cycle rather than the moment of acquisition. Once you accept depreciation as unavoidable, your decisions change, not toward perfection, but toward limiting how much time is allowed to take from you. Signal 3. Repeating expenses blur the feeling of loss. The expenses that slow you down the most are rarely the large one-time costs. They are the small recurring ones you stop feeling. Auto-related costs rarely arrive as a single painful bill. Instead, there is annual insurance, weekly fuel, routine maintenance, and familiar unexpected repairs. Each one is explainable. Each one feels necessary, and because they arrive separately, they are rarely seen together. The human brain struggles with fragmented costs. When money leaves in small pieces, the sense of trade-off fades. You do not feel like you made a major decision. You feel like you are maintaining daily life. That familiarity allows cash to keep flowing without activating caution. Over time, these costs accumulate. The total amount spent keeping the vehicle operational often exceeds what you imagined at purchase, but without a single defining moment of loss, the impact never fully registers. This creates a financial blind spot. Large expenses like rent or taxes are visible, small recurring ones are not, and what you cannot see, you do not adjust. Gradually, accumulation slows. Not from lack of intent, but because cash flow is pre-assigned. Investments are delayed, buffers shrink, flexibility disappears quietly. The most dangerous part is normalization. Once a cost becomes routine, reducing it feels unreasonable. You compare it to yesterday, not to alternatives. And because you managed yesterday, you continue today. Breaking this signal requires bringing recurring costs into a single frame. When you total a year of vehicle expenses and place them side by side, clarity returns. Not to induce guilt, but to reveal what fragmentation hid. Once small costs are seen together, choice returns, and with it, the ability to adjust trajectory. Signal 4. Social approval arrives before financial consequences. If a decision earns immediate approval, its real cost often arrives much later. A car is not just transportation. In many contexts, it is a signal. It communicates stability, progress, success. The human brain responds strongly to these signals. Recognition creates reward. That reward arrives early. The moment you drive the new car, confidence rises. Others respond differently. You see yourself differently. These signals are fast and reinforcing. Financial consequences move on a different timeline. Monthly payments, annual insurance, cyclical maintenance, nothing dramatic, just accumulation. This timing mismatch creates a perception gap. Reward arrives before cost is felt. And because the brain prioritizes the present, decisions get reinforced repeatedly before doubt emerges. This is not weakness. It is environment. Society continuously communicates that upgrades equal progress. Over time, that message becomes normal. The problem is that social norms are not designed to optimize personal financial trajectories. They are designed to create conformity. And conformity often trades long-term flexibility for short-term acceptance. Eventually, the trade becomes visible, not as crisis, but as limitation. Hesitation before new opportunities, reluctance to disrupt existing commitments. What once felt freeing now defines boundaries. The solution is separating financial decisions from social response, evaluating them privately and over time, asking whether today's reward is worth tomorrow's constraints. Delaying recognition in exchange for flexibility often produces less visible progress, but far stronger outcomes. Signal 5, flexibility disappears before you notice. When a decision starts removing flexibility, its impact goes far beyond money. Long-term commitments do not become dangerous because you cannot pay them. They become dangerous because they reduce choice. The shift is subtle. Payments are made, life continues, no alarm sounds, but the system grows rigid. Each fixed obligation closes a door. With income pre-allocated, every new option must pass the same test. Can the current structure survive? This shapes opportunity perception. Not from lack of ambition, but from lack of margin. Flexibility fades gradually. You hesitate before positive change. Higher potential but lower initial income becomes risky. Investments needing time are postponed. Rest or recalibration feels impossible. Often, this is misinterpreted as maturity or caution, but many times it is the reaction of a system that has lost elasticity. Progress slows quietly. You do not fail. You simply do not advance as fast as you could. And without comparison, this stagnation is easy to miss. Over time, This affects more than finances. It narrows future vision. Maintenance replaces building. Opportunities pass silently. Protecting flexibility requires treating it as an asset, preserving cash flow space, avoiding full income commitment, allowing room to adapt. Flexibility does not just protect against risk. It enables opportunity. And in the long run, that difference matters most. Signal 6. Repetition multiplies impact. A single decision rarely derails a life. Repeating the same decision over years does. Many people do not make this choice once. They make it repeatedly, each time labeled reasonably. Upgrade, new phase, reward. Each time resetting the financial system. Because the prior cycle was manageable, restarting feels safe. But each restart returns you to the most expensive phase, the steepest depreciation, the tightest cash flow. Time that could have eased burden gets erased. Average costs stay high. And because no shock occurs, the cumulative impact stays hidden. Over years, repetition doubles the effect, not only from new costs, but from delayed opportunity. Each restart postpones letting money work elsewhere. This cycle often disguises itself as progress. You feel aligned with life's pace, but over time, effort maintains position instead of expanding it. Breaking the cycle requires extending decision lifespan, letting time complete its work. As costs decline, cash flow frees. Time shifts from opponent to ally. When repetition ends, progress does not require more income. It requires giving time space to work when the signals start to line up. When you place all 6 signals side by side, the point is not any single one. It is the system they form together. None are dramatic alone. None feel like obvious mistakes. Each has justification. That is why the system can operate for years without alarm. Together, they reinforce one another. Monthly framing hides total cost. Depreciation stays silent. Recurring costs blur loss. Social reward precedes consequence. Flexibility erodes. Repetition resets progress. There is no single moment of realization, only a vague sense of effort without outcome. Many blame themselves rather than the system. This section offers no solution, only a mirror. Once signals align, you can see whether they serve or slow you. The 3 things that matter most. If only a few ideas remain, anchor these 3. First, framing matters as much as choice. Monthly focus narrows vision and hides time. Second, the most dangerous losses are silent. Gradual erosion avoids triggering adjustment. Third, repetition multiplies impact. Breaking the cycle lets time work for you. These are not rules. They are questions. And asking the right questions matters more than having preset answers. The real lesson most people miss. The lesson is not whether to buy a car. It is understanding the difference between choices that feel stable now and those that improve life over time. Stability reduces immediate stress. Progress expands future options. Progress often feels slightly uncomfortable. It delays reward to preserve flexibility. This difference is subtle but powerful. One builds comfort, the other builds capability. The car is one example. The principle applies everywhere. Ask not whether you can manage, but what the decision buys you in the future. Clarity, not rules, creates sustainable progress, a quiet invitation. Do not change anything yet. Observe. Watch where money leaves your life. Watch which decisions feel safe now versus flexible later. Let questions exist. Change begins with awareness. If this perspective resonates, stay. Not for advice, but for clarity. Reading the signal, not the noise. Everything returns to one question. Where is your system taking you? Noise is visible. Signals are quiet. Money signals exist to help you tell the difference. I'm Dolan, and this is Money Signals.